Today we are making Pop and Grandma's German potato salad. I took a photograph of the recipe so you have that. You cook the potatoes by boiling them with the skins on until they're soft. You test them with a knife. These need about another 10 minutes or so. When the potatoes are done cooking, put them in the sink. Dump out the hot water, put in cold water, and cool the potatoes down because you're going to have to peel. Drain the potatoes. Next, you're going to chop up 2 large onions. Once the onions are chopped, they will look like that. Set them aside. Next, we're going to peel the potatoes and chop them up. We're using 5 pounds of potatoes. For each potato, you peel it, chop it into 3 or 4 or 5 pieces, and then dice it. And I'm going to have you throw it in a pot because you probably don't have big frying pans. So use a deep pot, and then we're going to throw the pot on the stove. Put the onions in with the chopped up potatoes. I'll show you what the chopped up potatoes look like. And then you cook it all, just the onions and the potatoes, no oil or anything, until it starts to brown. You chop each potato into squares about that big. I guess they're about 1/2 to 3/4 inch. Don't need to be precise. They're going to break up some of the potatoes, so you don't have to worry about it. And then 5 pounds of potatoes are now peeled and cut up. Here's your 2 large onions chopped. Take the 2 large onions, throw it in with the potatoes. Now we're going to move over to the range. We're going to put it on medium to medium high, and we're going to cook it and keep turning it. Okay, we've got the onions and potatoes cooking on the stove. I'm going to show you that in a second. Now we're going to make the sauce, which is 1/4 cup flour, 3/4 cup sugar, 1 tablespoon salt, a dash of pepper, 1/2 cup of white vinegar, and 1 1/2 cups water. You combine that all together. I like to use a whisk, but you don't need to. You can use a fork. And then you're going to put that on the stove, and you're going to cook it until it thickens up. So we're going to do that in a little bit. Let me show you the potatoes cooking. Onions and potatoes are cooking. Your goal with the cooking, it usually takes about 20 minutes to cook it, is to cook the onions and to brown the potatoes a little bit. That means you have to scrape the bottom of the pan as you're cooking this. You probably stir it every 2 or 3 minutes. Come over here. We've got our water, flour, sugar, salt, pepper, vinegar. You just combine all the ingredients in a little pot, and then you stir it up. Put it on the stove. When the potatoes are getting close to being done, you turn it on and you get it boiling. Here's all my dry ingredients together. You can see the dash of pepper. I use a little bit more than a dash. You can just do it to taste, but that's the salt, pepper, flour, sugar. Don't need to be exact on your measurements. And when I do my 1/2 cup of vinegar, I actually go a little bit heavier on the vinegar. I like my German potato salad a little bit saucier, so I add a little bit more liquid, probably 1/8 of a cup, 1/4 of a cup. You can see the potatoes are cooking now, and you can see some stuff is kind of crisping up on the bottom. Make sure you take your spatula and keep removing that. It'll go into the potatoes, and it adds that little bit of crispiness to the potatoes. So you're essentially frying the potatoes and the onions in the pan. I have mixed together the other ingredients for the sauce. It's just sitting there waiting. Once the potatoes get close, I will turn that on and get it to a boil. Turning around here. Once the potatoes are done and the onions, I'll put them in this big bowl. I will throw some bacon crumbles on them. Grandma cooks her own bacon and chops it up. I decided that just buying some bacon crumbles is a lot easier and a lot less messy. So we're going to put those together once the potatoes and onions are done and the sauce is thickened, and I'll show you what that sauce looks like when it's starting to thicken up so you know the consistency. And then you pretty much got it. You can see the potatoes are done. There's some brown from the bottom. You can cook them as long as you want. I usually cook them about 20 minutes just to get some crisp on it. And now the flame is on the sauce. I'm going to dump the potatoes in the bowl, and then I'll show you this sauce once it starts to thick. So every couple minutes you stir the sauce Just because you got that flour and sugar in there, you want to make sure it's mixing up. Every couple of minutes you do that until it starts boiling, then you've got to watch it once it starts boiling. I've transferred the potatoes over the bowl, and I grabbed a handful and a half of bacon. You add as much bacon or as little bacon as you want. Threw it on top. I'm going to throw the sauce on top of that after it's done thickening. Then mix it up, and then I'll take a look at it, get a clean spoon, taste it, make sure it tastes good, and then if I need to add something, I can add it at that point. All right, we're back. The sauce is starting to thicken. You can see that it's turning a milky white. You can see the pepper in there, and when you actually stir it, it feels thicker. So it's going to cook for another minute or two, and we're going to call it good. The thickness, it's not going to get like peanut butter. It's just going to thicken up a little bit so that it isn't runny. So if you have any questions on how thick it should be, ring me up. You can see that it starts to bubble a little bit at the edges, but it's not going to boil per se. So once it starts heating up, it's going to start bubbling at the edges, rolling toward the middle, and it's going to thicken up a little bit. And once it thickens up a little bit, then you throw it on top of the potatoes and the bacon and the onions. You can see I threw it on top now. I'm going to mix this up, and then I'll show you a little video clip of it once it's mixed up. I'll give it a taste and make sure it tastes good. If it needs a little more bacon or needs a little pepper, salt or something, you can throw that in. But it should be good. It's now mixed up. You can see it looks a little bit soupy at the edges. I like to make it a little saucier because once this cools down and I put it in the fridge and then you reheat it to eat it up there, Ryan, it's going to be the right consistency and the right saucy. So I like to make it a little bit over saucy at first because that gets absorbed quite a bit into the potatoes. So I'm going to wrap this up for you. We'll bring it up right before the soccer game tomorrow. We'll give it to you after the soccer game. You can just put a little in a bowl and microwave it when you want to heat it up, or I know Pop and I also like it cold. So, love you. If you have any questions, call your dad. Not your mom. Call your dad, and I can walk you through any trouble spots when you're making this German potato salad.